Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah learning of inspiring and learning. We always like to start off with giving, because how we give, that's how Hashem's going to give to us. So let's give generously so Hashem can give us generously. So I'm going to put some coins in the tzedakah box. They're already so full, it's hard to hear it. That's how we like it. And I do this class in merit of the complete refuah shalema for Chaya Sarabat Rivka, Chana Leah, Chaya Sarabas Rivka, Chana Leah Sarabat Pesha Gittel, Rafal Chai Meir Ben Simachasha, Devorah Leah Bas Yafaliba, Chayim Nessa, Levi Ben Shoshana, Razel Bas Hadas, Chana Bela Bas Devorah, Rachel Bas Chaya Yuta, and in merit of the complete refuah shalema of my dear grandmother Bela Bas Chaya, and Yosef Yitzchak Ben Bela. I also do this, and we're going to also do this in honor of everyone that needs a refuah shalema. May it bring you all merits. I do this weekly in honor of my dear grandmother Rivka Dina Bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. Tonight we have back with us Mrs. Chana Sharfstein from Crown Heights. Now from Crown Heights, she is an expert on Scandinavian Jewish history. Is a noted author, educator, and tour guide. She was raised and educated in Sweden. Chana is a retired member of the New York City school system. She is a docent at the Museum of Jewish Heritage and the Center of the Jewish History, and she wears so many more hats. So today, we met at a l'chaim of her dear great nephew, who I'm very close with, and he should have all the blessings in the world. And when I met her, she was so gracious, and I asked her what she wants to speak about. So we compromised, and we did two classes. One class was what I wanted her to speak about, and she was very happy to do it. And this class is what she wants to speak about, which I'm very happy, because it's something that's very dear to my heart. Mrs. Chana Sharfstein is moving to Israel. She is making Aliyah, and she told me about it, and I found it fascinating. And she's going to share with us why she's doing, why she's moving her life to Israel. And we're going to also start off with a story that she shared with us about her dear uncle and the Rebbe. So if you can share with us your words of wisdom.
Okay, so my father was a Rav in Stockholm. His name was Rav Yaakov Yisrael Zuber, and he had a younger brother who lived here, and his name was Nosson Nota Zuber, and he lived in Linden, New Jersey. So I came when I have one son. His name is Yisrael Sharfstein, and when he was going to be bar mitzvah, the whole family went into the Rebbe for the bar mitzvah. And of course, the Rebbe gave him a bracha and everything. And then at the end, the Rebbe surprised me completely by asking me, how is your uncle? How is Rabbi Nosonata Zuber? And of course, they knew each other from way back in Russia, from school days, from the yeshiva, from Tomchet Mimim. So I said, oh, my uncle is retiring. And the Rebbe said in Yiddish, was ist das? What does that mean? And of course, my first thought was, the Rebbe doesn't know what the word retirement means, so he's asking me to explain what it means. And I began to explain it, and he just started to smile very broadly, and he said, no. There is no such thing as retirement. That's why I asked you, why do you say he's retiring? There is no such thing. So I said, well, what do you mean by that? He said, what is your uncle doing? I said, well, his community is dying out in that area. And it's so interesting now. My granddaughter, Javi, lives in that area now, and that community is growing up again. That's what happens in America. Communities come and they start, they grow, they get bigger, they die out, and then they get reawakened again. In any case, at that point, his community, the people were getting older, the children had moved away, and things became very, very quiet, and there was no really a need for him to be a rabbi there anymore. And he used to give hashgacha, and he used to give classes and things. So the Rebbe said, no, no, no. He shouldn't retire. You have to tell him that he should move to New York. Maybe that's where he belongs now. And he should continue to give classes here and should be active. But there's no such thing as retirement. We get older and we might not be able to do physically what we have done all our lives. But that doesn't mean that we stop doing anything. We just change what we are doing, and we do it in a different way and maybe in a different place. And so I was thinking about that now, that, when I retired, and I retired from the city of New York, I remember that I was so, so happy the first few weeks because it was Tishrei time and, no school, not having to go to work, not having to clock in. I could just make suppers whenever I wanted. I could go shopping for food when I wanted. And it was just leisurely and relaxing. And that lasted through Tishrei. And then after Tishrei, all of a sudden was like, what do I do now? The days are so long. And this is not really a way to live. So I didn't know what to do. And then I came on the bright ideas that I could become a volunteer. And I became a docent, which is a guide at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. And I had to be there for 4 or 6 months, was it, studying all about Holocaust literature, all about the Holocaust, all about the political parties, the pre-war situation, the war situation, the aftermath. And it was fascinating. We had wonderful teachers and wonderful classes. And then I became a guide there. And people said to me, why do you spend your time doing that? Like, do you mean? I said, I'm so happy I can give back to the community because the whole idea is I can share the knowledge that I have. And it's a way of being a care of people. I told them how brave the Frum people were, about how wonderful it was that people realized how important it was to have Emunah and Bitochen. And I can tell this to people who are not Frum and to people who are not even Jewish, how important it is to have strength and believe and know that there is a better world around you, and have faith in life. And it's really a worthwhile, meaningful thing. And I get like a lot of strength back from that. And then I became a guide at the Botanic Garden in Brooklyn, and I learned all about plants. And then I became a guide in the Center for Jewish History in Manhattan. And then the last thing was I became a guide in the what used to be a big, big shul on the east side. It's called the Eldridge Street Synagogue. And I had to learn all about the architecture and things. So I really was extremely busy in what was called retirement, going to Manhattan, doing all these tours for people and always learning about new exhibits and so on. So there is no such thing as retirement, because if you retire and you feel, to have the word tire in it, you become tired of life because you're not doing anything. So you have to find other ways of using your capabilities and talents to make the world a better place, to continue on to be active and involved. That's what it's all about.
Wow. It sounds like you had a lot of fun in your retirement stages of being a tour guide in so many places. Did you meet
Yeah,
any interesting people along the way
I,
and stories you could share with us?
I met lots and lots of interesting people. You always meet interesting people, and you always have fascinating experiences. One of the ones that really stuck on my mind was that I had a group of Frum yeshiva boys coming with me through the museum. And there was a place when we stopped at the broken out to destroy the Jews. And it was a terrible night. And there was a lot of looting and a lot of destruction, and a lot of terrible things happened. And a lot of people were even put into work camps at that time. And it was just an awful thing. So when we came to that exhibit, I took the boys and I said, so look at this, what happened here, because they said they didn't want any Jews in Poland anymore. And they started to say that they didn't want Polish Jews in Germany anymore. and the Germans started to push them out of Germany and told them to go back to Poland. And guess what happened? When they came to the borders, the Polish people said, we don't want you back. We don't want any Jews coming back here. So they left them in an area of land between Germany and Poland, which was no man's land. It's the land between two borders. And they suffered terribly. It was just November time, and it was a horrible time of the year. And this young Jewish man who had lived with his parents in Germany, but who really came from Poland, they had immigrated to Germany, got a terrible letter from his parents to say that they're absolutely suffering horribly and they don't know what to do, and he has to help them. So he goes to the French embassy because he was in Paris at the time. He went to the French embassy. He was living with his aunt, and he goes to the German embassy there, and he says to them, laugh at him. And they said, well, originally you came from Poland, so you're not really of German blood, and you're Jews besides. So no, there's nothing we can do for them. And he was a young boy. He was probably no more than in the office, and shot one of the people in the office. And of course, that gave the excuse for the Germans that now they could go and plunder and kill Jews, because this was like the impetus for them, and that was Kristallnacht. So I'm showing this to the Jewish boys and talking about how horrible it was and how nobody in the world paid any attention to it. And this led Hitler to take more power. He saw that, the world might not like what he's doing, but nobody's sticking up for the Jews. So nobody really cares. I can do whatever I want. So I said to them, and they had told us in our classes that when you take people through a tour, you don't keep on talking the whole time. You try to initiate them into what's happening around them. You try to get them to absorb what is happening, and you try to make them think, and you try to get answers from them so you can see that you're really bringing them into the situation and not just talking the whole time. So I said, golden opportunity here. And I said to the boys, now, this is a horrible, horrible thing. Do you think something like that could happen in the United States? And they all said very happily, oh, no, of course not. We're living in America. Thank God we're living in America. Nothing like that would ever happen here. I said, you know what? I was a child living in Sweden when Kristallnacht happened, and I wasn't really aware of it. I heard about it from my parents, and I knew it was something bad, but I didn't feel it. But I felt it myself a few years ago in my own neighborhood in Crown Heights. And they said, huh? I said, yeah. I came back from a tour from Scandinavia, as a matter of fact. And I came just back to my community, and I walked to my house with all my things. And the first thing I had to do was go to the bank to clear out all the bills that I had paid and make sure that all my checks were cleared and everything was in order. And I'm walking out of my house, and I'm walking up Kingston Avenue, which is our main street. And I'm trying to cross Eastern Parkway, and I saw loads and loads of police in the neighborhood. And I thought to myself, am I making a mistake? Is this like an American holiday that I forgot about? And I'm trying to think.
You froze for a second where you're saying, I'm trying to think. Mrs. Sharfstein, we just
Saw that the stores were all being boarded up. And I thought, wow, it's so interesting that it's summertime and everybody's away. And I get everybody decided to redecorate their stores. That's so interesting. They were all boarded up, all the stores all over the place. And I'm walking up the street, and policemen are looking at me, and there are no people in the street. And I'm like, wow, everybody went away for the summer. And I just came back. So that's so interesting. I'm so happy everybody's in the country. And then a policeman looks at me and he says, where do you think you're going? And I looked at him in surprise, like, why is he talking to me? I'm not doing anything wrong. And I said, I'm going to the bank. He said, which bank? I said, the bank across the street on Kingston Avenue. He said, no, you're not going there. And I started to laugh. And I said, what do you mean I'm not going there? I'm going to that bank. Why can't I go there? He said, I think you should go home. I said, what? He says, yes, I don't think you should go there. And I said, well, but I need to go there. And he said, I really think you should go home. And he made me feel that I really had to turn around. And I'm like, well, why are you saying that? And he says, you don't know what's happening? And I said, what is happening? And he said, I think you should go home and you should turn on the news and you should find out what's happening. So the way he spoke to me, and there were no people around or anything, it was kind of eerie and weird. So I went back home. I went upstairs, and I didn't even turn on any television or any radio or anything. I heard noise from the street. And my house is on Montgomery Street, and it's like on a hill. So through my window, I can see down on Empire Boulevard, which is the street below me. And I look out the street, and I see Sharpton, who was a leader of the Black people, of the very, very racist Black people, leading a group of people through my neighborhood, and they're yelling, "Death to the Jews." And let me tell you, I was scared out of my wits, totally scared. And I'm thinking to myself, this is unreal. I'm in America. I never experienced this during my whole childhood in Sweden, living next to the Nazis. And here they're saying death to the Jews. What is going on? And then, of course, I found out the terrible, terrible story about how a child who accidentally was killed by a car that went off the tracks when the Rebbe had been was going to the Ohel or something, and there was the carloads going behind him, and this Black child was killed, and this was retaliation. And I told that story to the boys, and they were shocked. And I said, and I want you to know that for 2 or 3 days in this big city of New York, we were isolated from the rest of the world. The people in Manhattan didn't even care what was happening to us. And we were living in such fright that I remember there was even a woman who had to go to the hospital to give birth, and nobody wanted to come to pick her up to take her to a hospital. Nobody wanted to enter our neighborhood. It was like a war zone. And Dinkins, who was the mayor at the time, he just said, let them vent. And he let them carry on for 2-3 days like that. And it was horrible. And of course, like the boys really reacted, and I felt very good about the whole situation. I got the boys involved. I made them really understand. And I thought I was doing a really great job. Then the boys leave, and I'm ready to go home. And I'm asked to go into the office of the head of the guides. He wants to see me, and I'm beaming. I'm happy as a bird. He's going to tell me how fantastic I am. He's going to tell me what a great job I did. And I walk in there, and he totally stuns me, and he said, Mrs. Sharfstein, if you want to continue to be a guide here, you better watch what you do. And I go, huh? And he says, you cannot come in and politicize and do the things and say the things that you do. You're undermining the government of the United States, and you're criticizing the former mayor of New York, and you're giving opinions on things that are unheard of. And he said, if you can't promise me that you will never, never again repeat what you did today, then you cannot come back to be a guide here anymore. And I wanted to be a guide, so I promised him, and I never repeated it. However, a couple of years later, for whatever reason, I really don't remember why, it doesn't even matter, I went on Google and I looked up the incident in Crown Heights in 1990s, and you know what they said? That was the only pogrom that ever happened in the United States. And let me tell you, I felt richly rewarded at that point, because what I had done was absolutely right, but nobody wanted to even bring it to the surface.
Well, I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that you did. I'm just going to interrupt you for one moment if it's okay, but we're living in a time that we're living in almost like a false world. And MS really comes out, truth, and the truth will come out. But today, and it really bothers me a lot that there's some people in leadership that doesn't deserve to be in leadership. And someone that's in leadership that doesn't take the opportunity to apologize for their past mistakes. I believe in repentance. I believe in, the family of this huge loss deserves this. But, people that give these people a spotlight is really part of this terrible pogrom of anti-Semitism to allow
the young woman who was graduating from the law school of the City College of New York. And at graduation, she spoke with such hatred against Jews. And she was speaking about the Palestinian cause. And it was just awful about how much hatred she aroused. And I'm just, in for the thing that hatred should not be part of. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was so against hatred of any kind. And he was so careful to be kind to everybody of any kind of person, anybody that worked in 770, even the janitor, anybody who helped his mother with any cooking or cleaning or anything. He was always so compassionate to everybody because he treated every person as a human being, regardless of who they were. And I'm very
Jews and
concerned.
non-Jews alike. He treated Jews
Right,
and
yes, yes,
everyone.
yes. And what I'm so concerned with now is the amount of hatred that is coming up on the college campuses, the hatred that is coming up among the professors and things. It's really, really sad to see all that changing. And it used to be a much better world after World War II, but somehow or other the situation is changing. And I was listening to Netanyahu's speech the other day at the UN, and it was an excellent speech, but it was so sad to see that the whole place in the United States, in the United Nations, was so empty of people. There were so few people there. And then he said that he encounters anti-Semitism and America has to stop doing what they're doing and spreading all the news about Israel that's incorrect news and stirring people up against Israel. And he said he has to stop in Israel. It has to stop in the college campuses. And he ended up by saying, even the anti-Semitism in the United Nations. And it's just so sad that he has to say all these things. And then he said about how, in his political speech, how we're becoming friends with the Arab countries that are around Israel and how helpful that will be for the whole world if we work together. And then the next thing you hear is that the Arab countries declined that they had ever really spoken to him about it because they just don't want to say it. They spoke to him about it privately, but publicly they didn't want to acknowledge. So anyway, let's get away from the political part because we don't really want to deal with that. And I also just want to say on the topic of that I taught in the New York City public schools, and I taught English as a second language, which is English to foreign-born children. And I found it extremely rewarding because I knew the kind of struggles that I went through when I came, even though I didn't come in difficult circumstances, but coming to a new country and a new language is very, very difficult. So I understood the turmoil in the lives of these children. And the students that I have were children that came from Hispanic countries where English is not spoken, of course. And I was, thank God, Baruch Hashem, was very successful with these children. And I ended up taking them to spelling contests with bilingual students all the way to Albany. And we won. Now, we didn't win the highest prize, but we were allowed to come in to enter the contest because I really prepared them for spelling and things. And I had a very good rapport with my students. So we all have to just remember we have to make this world only a better place by being kind to each other, no matter where the people are or who the people are, and hope that by being kind, we'll get kindness in return. I think that was what the Rebbe really spoke about all the time, about just being compassionate, being caring. And that's why Israel is the first one to help any country that's in need, whether it's a storm or whether it's a hurricane, a windstorm. fire, whatever it is that happens, they're the first ones on the scene to help out all the time.
Also, when the Surfside Towers happened in Florida, the heart of Florida, Israel was the first ones to send people to help.
Right. So let's move on to another topic. Okay. So you're talking about my making plans.
So we're doing a little, like, you know, telling us about what you did in your career, and now we are you're moving along to the next stage in life, and we'd love to hear about it.
Okay, so I really like what they're saying. I am working together with Nefesh B'Nefesh, which is an organization, an Israeli organization that helps people resettle in Israel, and they do an absolutely fantastic job. So their slogan is just what I really like. They don't say you are leaving America, they say you are coming home, because Israel is our country and Israel is our home. And I really feel very strongly about that. So actually, when I was at one of these Nefesh B'Nefesh gatherings in Manhattan, and I was checking to see if all my papers were in order, because you have to have an entire big file. Can you imagine at my stage in life, I had to have a paper to specify that I was Jewish. And it wasn't enough that I said my father was a rabbi and everything about my background. No, I had to have a letter that specified that I was Jewish. And I ended up getting a letter like that from Rabbi Levertov, who is a Chabad rabbi in New Windsor, which is near, what is it? Not Yale. What's the other university there? Not Yale. One of the Ivy League places. You don't know it? Doesn't really matter. Okay. So anyway, I met him in Norway, and it was all connected with the bracha I had from the Rebbe. The Rebbe gave me a bracha once, and I told him everything that happened, and he said, was noch, which means and what else? And I had nothing else to say about my tour, and he gave me an extra $1 for was noch. And then I met Charles when I was traveling in Norway. And then we met, of course, in Crown Heights, and I decided, just out of like that the was noch, what next I have to do, that he was part of my bracha. I had to make him a shidduch, and I made his shidduch. So anyway, I asked him to send me a letter to state that I was Jewish. So anyway, you need these files. So there I was in Manhattan, and I was sitting at a desk, and the woman was looking at my files, and somebody came over to my desk, and she said, I want to see you after you finish your work here. I said, okay. Any specific reason? She says, yeah, I want to talk to you. I said, was there a problem? She says, no, I just want to talk to you. So I said, okay. So it turned out that she was involved with the PR system of Nefesh B'Nefesh, and they wanted to interview me because she heard me talk about that I came from Sweden, and they have very few people that come into Nefesh B'Nefesh that have lived in Sweden, and so she wanted to know about it. And then she said to me, well, tell me, when did you decide that you wanted to go on Aliyah? And I never really thought about it. It's that kind of thing you sit and think about, like, you know, thought about it last Wednesday. I thought about it in February. I thought about it 2 years ago. I said, no, it's so interesting. I said, I really learned about the existence of Eretz Yisrael, which is what we called it, when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and I was a little child in school in Sweden. And she says, and what happened? I said, well, I came home from school and we had an assignment. We had to learn the Swedish national anthem by heart. And I was saying it over and over again. And my oldest brother, his name is Mendel, Menachem Mendel, he came over to me and he said, Chana, the last 2 lines of that song, you do not say. You move your mouth as if you're saying it when teacher tells you to do it, but do not use you don't use your voice to say those words. And I said, why? He says, well, tell you why. He says, let's go over what it says. So the national anthem is like very many other national anthems of most countries. There's something very militant in a national anthem, like Napoleon's March, you know, some March of Victory that we took up. Or you talk about the Star Spangled Banner, the bombs glaring through the night, bursting through the night, it's again like this big thing with fire, and most of them have to do with that. So the Swedish national anthem talks about Sweden, that once in its heyday it was a country that had lots of other countries, like they even marched into Russia and they conquered the Baltic countries, and they were a pretty big power. And so the poem goes that we remember Sweden as it was, and we know what it is, and we also know that one day it will be what it is again. So this is, how you declare your allegiance to the country. But the last two lines say, I want to live and I want to die in the North. And my brother says, that's not for us. I said, why? He says, because this is a good place to live in temporarily, but this is not our home. This is a good place to be in, but we don't want to live and die here. We're lucky that we're living here now, but this is a temporary thing. And I said, so what is the place where we're supposed to live in? He said, Eretz Israel. And I said, that was my first. And I said, where is that? And he showed it to me on the map, and he said, this is going to one day be our land. And of course, that's not what it is. That's Israel, but we call it Eretz Israel. And so I said, that's how I found out about it. And that was like,
Wow.
was in the back.
But I just want to say that was almost like planting a seed for you to know that you're making the right decision. Your brother almost gave you a hint. That's where you should end up. And Israel's really our land from the beginning. It was given to us. If you could share a little bit more about that. It's our heritage.
Well, the whole idea, America has been very good to me in many ways. Of course, I'm not going to say like I spent, most of my life here, and it was very good. I went to college here, and I had my career here, and I had a lot of interesting years here and productive years here. But what happened to my father was tragic. So I never really felt an allegiance to the country. I felt appreciative, very appreciative, but I never felt a love for the country. And I don't really, like you said, I still have, even though Sweden is like not what it used to be because so many other people have moved in there and the quality of the country has changed, it still emotionally for me was home. So like I have positive feelings about it. I don't have that warm, fuzzy feeling about the United States, but I do about Israel every time I go there. And I know that, people can criticize it and find faults with all kinds of things, but it is a Jewish land, and it's something with having Jewish bus drivers say Shabbat Shalom to you when it's Friday afternoon. Or it's like, I like the expression in Israel, like every day in Israel is a Yom Tov, a good day. So instead of just saying good day, but you say every day, you say Yom Tov, Yom Tov. We just reserve that for holidays. So it's like a different kind of feeling that every day there. Or when it's Purim or it's Pesach, the way everything is advertised, it's like part of the country. When it's Hanukkah time, it's like you see Hanukkah menorahs everywhere, and you see Hanukkah cards everywhere, and you see all the greetings for that. And it's just a very special feeling to be there. So I'm really looking forward to going there because I feel that it's going to be a new stage in my life and a very productive stage in my life. I don't want to live here and live alone in an apartment. And there's this, my life was really great until COVID. And then, COVID changed things because COVID already, you couldn't go to Manhattan. I couldn't go for lectures. I couldn't be a guide anymore. I couldn't do all those things. So, okay, I was creative enough to turn to writing, and I wrote some articles and things. But then after COVID, and I stayed with my daughter in the 5 towns. But then I came back to Crown Heights. And being in a very lovely big home that I have, there's a feeling of loneliness. My husband was gone, and I was by myself. And it's just a lonely existence. It's a lonely existence. You want to be a social person. You have to get dressed and go out and go. And I always wish that there had been, like, I really envy those neighborhoods that have nice centers for seniors. I envy them because they can walk out to a place in their area and they can have lectures and classes. and physical equipment that they can go on, and maybe even a swimming pool, and they can have lunch with friends there, and they can go there for 4 or 5 hours a day, and as many hours as they want, and they can play games and do whatever they want and have a nice relaxing day. We don't have that here. So it's like, yes, you can go to a Tanya class and you can go to a learning class, but that's an hour here and an hour there. I wanted something that was like more with life, so I wouldn't feel lonely, because 1 hour out of 12 hours that you're awake is not very much. And I'm looking forward to being with seniors in a senior housing facility, having my own apartment, which is important to me. I want my privacy, but a place that has a shul, that has a library, that has a gym, that has a pool, that has a restaurant, that has classes, that has art projects and things like that. And I want to feel productive even as I get older. I don't want to feel that I'm just a little old lady having nothing to do all day.
Well, it's pretty amazing that you're taking charge of your life. Most people that are elderly usually rely on their children, and I wanted to know, how does your children feel that you're going home? That's where you're going home to our, there's no place like home. Israel's our home. But how do they feel that you're not going to be close to them?
I'm
In
very happy. I'm very happy you're asking a question like that, because I think that's really, really important. And I hope that all seniors that are listening to this, and I hope that even people that are not seniors will listen to this, is that you cannot and should never expect your children to be around you all the time, to keep you busy, to keep you happy. Every person has their own life at their own stage. And so to expect that your children should have the energy and time to give to you when they're raising their own children and they have of their own families to take care of, you're making a big mistake. And then you feel that you're not getting enough of them. And that makes you feel anxious and maybe sad. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing at all. You hear about the daughter that will call up her mother, and the mother will say, you finally picked up the phone to call me. And how does the daughter feel? She feels like really, really upset that she even called her. So she said, I'm not going to call her again, because if that's how she responds. But that's how it is, So you really can't do that. Every generation has to take care of itself. That's how life goes. You can't expect a child to be entertained by a parent constantly. A child has to figure out what to do with their time on their own also.
Wow, that's such good advice. Can you give us some other advice for ladies that lost their spouses, how to fill their cup?
I think it's very important for not just people who are widows, but for people as they become more mature, as they come to close to retirement age, to let's say 60, 65, even though they feel young, and they should feel young, and they feel strong, and they don't even want to hear about old age. But I think it's important to start thinking about aging at that point, because I wish I had started this process 10 years earlier than I'm doing it, because the older you get, the more overwhelming it is to change the place where you live, to pack up belongings, to put things away, to decide to minimize, that your place is too big, you don't need all that, to know what to do with all your things. It's easier to do it when you're in good health and when you're stronger. So people should really do it by the time they reach 65. They should think about downsizing already. And they should prepare then for the years of retirement, and not wait until they're 80 years old and it hits them like a brick. Hey, I'm getting old. And, what do I do now? I'm tired and I feel old and I don't know how to do things anymore.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so my question is where do people start? What would you tell people that don't know where to start?
Well,
What are some
okay,
options?
one thing I would tell people as young as you to start putting away money for retirement. Because I don't think becoming old and having no money must be extremely frustrating. It's difficult to live on a tight budget at any stage of your life, but particularly when you're old and you can't earn money anymore. So it's important to think in terms of that, in terms of don't spend all the money that you have at whatever stage you're at, but make sure that you have some savings. Make sure you put some money away into an IRA account. It's really important to do that. That's an essential thing. And then now that I'm packing things and doing things, which is extremely, extremely overwhelming, it's like you live through your whole life every day, because you look through all the things that you have and that you don't remember that you have because you didn't look at them, like photograph albums and books and knickknacks and just everything that you can think of. And Baruch Hashem, like I have a lot of things from all different countries that I went to and so on and so forth. And then you realize that life does not really consist of things. Things are things, they're objects, and they're not really, we don't have to get too attached to them. And I was thinking, I have so many things that I cannot take with me. I can take, like, maybe I'm taking 5% of what I own or something like that. And what does that mean? Like, should I be sad about it? And what about all the things that I'm not taking? What's going to happen to that? And I read a book called The Gift. Did you hear about that book? Oh, okay. So The Gift is the woman who wrote it was like over 90 years old, and she followed the philosophy to a great extent of Viktor Frankl. And I really like Viktor Frankl, and I'll tell you soon more about him if you're interested. But she said that when she was going to Auschwitz, or she was going to a camp, and they were leaving their home, and she must have been like 9, 10 years old. And she had a lot of toys and a lot of things she wanted to take. And they were told that they could just take a small suitcase. Of course, not knowing even that when they came to their destination, that would be taken away from them too. But as she was putting things into the suitcase and seeing how many things she had to leave, she was very, very sad. And she told that to her mother. And her mother put her hands on her head and he said, you know what? Whatever you need and whatever is important is in there. All the memories that you have, all the thoughts that you have, everything that's you, you're taking with you. And nobody can ever take that away from you. And so as I was packing and putting things away and thinking of all the things I'm leaving, I'm thinking that, okay, so I'm not taking all these things. I'm not taking back college papers that I wrote, and I'm not taking back report cards, and I'm not taking all the letters that people wrote to me at the end of their tours to Scandinavia. But I know that I did these things and I remember them, and I remember the letters that they wrote. And that's what's important. The important thing is the memories. And it's interesting, because we just went through Yom Kippur now. And the whole time through Yom Kippur, it talks all about remembering. Zachrenu, Zachrenu, Zachrenu. Remember Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Remember what Moshe Rabbeinu did. Remember this, remember that. Remember even Amalek. All the things, everything in life is memory. So it's like we have to build up beautiful memories in our life, and we have to cherish them. But objects are not what life is made of. So collecting a lot of objects and being overly concerned with possessions and physicalities is not where it's at.
Wow, that's a high level to get to, because I'm sure all these things are very meaningful to you. So my question
But
for
that's,
you is, sorry,
no, go ahead.
have you ever discussed this with your late husband about retirement with him, like a plan?
I really did not, and I don't think I would have done this if he were alive, because he was not well for a number of years and his health was declining. And with his health declining, life for him here was perfect. He had 24/7 help, and he went to a cola for older people, for Scandinavia, for retired people on Union Street or Kingston Avenue Union. And so he had a program each day, and he went for München, he went for Shacharis, and so men have their schedule and things, and he was fortunate that he had very good helpers and stuff. I think it's different because women don't have that kind of a lifestyle. So like women need different things to keep them occupied. And I would not have moved him out of that kind of a setting because that for him was a perfect setting.
Right. I'm happy that they have at least that in our community, and I believe that's what the Lubavitcher Rebbe started the program. Is that right?
Right, right. And that is a helpful program because they go there a few hours a day. Sometimes they have a little kiddush, sometimes they have a little lunch together. It just brings like a feeling of belonging and a feeling of happiness for them. Right, right.
Wow. I
Yep.
hope someone out there that has the means will do more for the community, for the elderly. It's something I'm very passionate about. You never know where life's going to take you. Maybe that's where it's going to take me. But for now, I hope that viewers that are listening, let's make it happen so the elderly can stay in our community and not have to go out of the community because they're such huge assets. And I feel that Israel's gaining so much by having you, and you're going to meet so many new friends, and they're really, really, really lucky. And I really commend you for doing this because it's a hard change. Change is hard for anyone. It's like the seasons change, everything changes, but
That's
we must make the changes in our life, because if we don't make them, who's going to make them for us? And you're going to be living a quality long life, which is, incredible, but you should live till Mashiach and with Mashiach.
amen, amen. No, I
Okay.
think I know my children are not entirely happy about it because they like the idea of my being here, but they do fully understand why I'm choosing this. And I certainly know that being there, I also chose a place that is perfect for me in the sense of that they have guest apartments in the building for a very, very small amount of money. If it is 150 shekel, which is like $50, you can have an entire apartment for a night. So I can always treat them to come for a few nights to stay in my place, or they can come for a Shabbos or whatever. And they have a restaurant, and you can order Shabbos meals there and eat the meals in the restaurant. And coming to Israel to visit people is always wonderful. And I chose a place in Yerushalayim because Yerushalayim is where I want to be. That's the center. I'll show there are beautiful places out of the city, but I want, when visitors come and they want to see me, that they should be in Yerushalayim. And just like I just went to shul the other day, and I went close by the house, but it was raining and drizzling on Yom Kippur, and I had to walk for 2-3 blocks. And even that was a bit of a chore. Here in the building, they have Shabbos elevators. You just go into the Shabbos elevators and you come to beautiful shul, and you don't have to go anywhere. And they have a kiddush afterwards, and you can eat your Shabbos meal in the restaurant in the building. And they have even a store where you can go shopping for food in the building. So it's just much more convenient, and you see people there, and it's the socializing, and it's just a life that is really suited for people who become limited in the things that they can do. But back to what you were saying before, I think that it's wonderful to be in a community where they have good facilities for seniors. So if they have facilities, like I said, where they have a couple of bikes that you could go on, a couple of sports equipment, maybe even a swimming pool would be wonderful. And they have lectures of interest about, what kind of food seniors should eat, or what kind of activities are good for them. Maybe some art activities, some other creative activities, some game playing or something. It's a wonderful thing for seniors that they could go for 3-4 hours a day and have a program there. That makes a huge difference, and it takes away from the feeling of loneliness. So when I see people walking in the street and they're, with a cane or a walker, and they have a helper next to them, I just feel a sadness about the whole scene. And it shouldn't really be like that.
Right, because it's your golden years. You're
Yes,
you're reaping
right.
the benefits of your life. That's
And then
incredible.
also the other thing is also, that's why I'm saying it's important that people should prepare for old age, meaning that you should have money so that you can travel back to America to visit your children whenever they have a simcha, that you should be able to join them. That it's not, it used to be like maybe 40 years ago when people went and you went with a ship to Israel. It was a whole big journey. Today, it's a trip on a plane. It's not such a terribly difficult kind of thing. So all you do is you get on a plane, you come back, and you stay for 2-3 weeks, and you visit your kids, and that's fine.
Yeah. When you were younger, did you ever imagine yourself to have all these accomplishments to your name?
No, for
Like,
sure not. For
so
sure not.
what would you tell someone that's starting out or wants opportunities? What would you tell them?
It's funny. When I came to Crown Heights, they had something that was called Neshei Chabad, but that was for old people. People that were 50 years old. Those are old people. That was the older people. And then the younger women wanted to make a new group, so they opened up a new group and they called it Young Women's League. So I became part of the Young Women's League. And Miriam Popek was one of the leaders of that group. So then one day she said to me, "You went to college. I'm sure you know how to speak. Why don't you, uh, be the one to present the speakers on the next meeting, be the chair lady?" I said, "I've never been a chair lady in my life." I mean, I took public speaking in college and I went up on stage to perform and stuff, but I've never done public speaking. She says, "I'm sure you can do it." So I said, "Okay." And then they had the meeting, and they had beautiful meetings in people's houses. They had nice big meetings, and the community was small, so everybody joined. So that was not a problem. So I did it, and everybody was so delighted and said, "Oh, I didn't know you could do things like that." And then they started asking me to make more speeches, and then they sent me all around the country to make speeches at Neshei Chabad gatherings in different cities and stuff. And I developed with time. I mean, it wasn't something that I thought it was really my thing, but I enjoyed it. And I had never flown till I was like 35 years old. And I flew when Neshei Chabad paid for it, and I could fly and get a babysitter. And that was like really an experience. And then, like I said, they asked me to start writing books. And then they had the Yiddish Shehem, and they asked me to write articles. And once I started doing all these things, I started doing more and more of it. So it's the thing no, you don't grow up thinking that you're going to conquer the world. And I don't think you should grow up thinking that, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You're not going to say, "I am going to become a very important writer." That's awful, because you might never become that. And then if you don't become it, you become very disappointed in yourself. So I never thought of that. So when I wrote the first 2 books that I was asked to do for the Americas, and they were popular, I was like so excited. I felt like I had given birth every time I walked past the store and I saw the book in the store window. It was like, wow, that's like my baby. I wrote that book, and that was very exciting. But it's not, like I said, something you think about. And I also wrote articles during COVID that were not accepted, that were rejected. And you know what? I didn't cry about it. I said to myself, well, those people didn't know how to appreciate it. I thought it was a really good story. For example, I wrote a story. I'll tell you about that story because I really liked it. It was called A Fairy Tale for Seniors, because everybody likes love stories for young people, and they think only young people can have love stories. And I thought that seniors can also have fairy tale stories. Even a widow can find another man to marry. And I see you like that story. So when I was very, very young, the the people came from Denmark. They came to Sweden on a fishing boat. And we opened up our homes to all these young people that came. And there was a young man that came to our house, and he was so tall and so handsome and so good looking. And I was probably like 14, 15 years old. And I thought that, I felt like the Little Mermaid, that this was the prince that had come from Denmark, and I was the Little Mermaid, and I was mesmerized by him, and I thought it was so exciting. And he was actually interested in my sister for a while, and then he went to America, and then my sister came to America, but they didn't get married. Anyway, uh, I have an apartment on Rachav Aza in Israel, and one time I was just walking down the street, and somebody calls me by my maiden name and says, "Hey, aren't you a Zuber girl?" And I thought, who is this? Who's calling me by my maiden name? I'm like already like, uh, my husband was ill at the time, and we were in Israel on a visit. And I can't understand who it is. And it's still this tall man, and he still looks pretty handsome, but I have no idea who he is. And it turns out that was a young man from Denmark, and he lived on the same block. So he drove a taxi, and he started driving us places when we wanted to go places. And then at some point, of course, my husband was nifter. And then I came to Israel, and somebody said, "Oh, you have to go and visit him. He's sitting shiva for his wife." So I went to his house, and he very happily said to all his children, "Oh, this is a girl I knew from my childhood, and I knew her from when we were kids in Scandinavia, and I used to eat in her house." And he starts telling all these stories, and his children are like, "Okay, okay." And then we saw each other in the street, and we said hello and stuff like that. And then one day I just, he talked about possibly getting married, but I really wasn't interested. Like I don't feel that when you get older, that it's always such a good idea. It's like good to have friends, but not to be married and live in the same house and everything else. Like that was like too much for me. Anyway, I decided during COVID, when I was really closed up and everything, and you were kind of alone, I wrote this fairy tale story. So it's a story basically based on this, and how they finally decide to get married, and how they meet in Newark in the airport, and he comes from Israel and she comes from New York, and they meet in the airport, and they're going back to Israel together, and he's carrying a Danish flag and she's carrying a Swedish flag, and they're going to go to get married in Sweden in her father's shul. And I thought it was a really cute story, but nobody wants it. So it was never published. But I enjoyed writing it. I can't hear you.
I
Well,
said that's great. I said that's great. Keep writing, don't stop writing. And they probably didn't know the back end of your story, why you wrote it, and it's awesome. I love it.
you
And
know,
I love that you
um,
know what you want. And I just want to also share something with you, what you said. And I heard this from a lot of people that don't have, I mean, your husband's always going to be with you, but a lot of people feel the need, and tell me if you agree with me, and I would love to just bring this up. Um, they feel the need that they can give advice to someone that has loss, and they'll come over to people and say, you should really get remarried, when the person is not there yet, and it could be very hurtful and painful to the person. I don't think anyone should decide that for anyone. So what's your take on that when people come and give advice? And if you can maybe tell us a little bit of what you did appreciate that people told you, when you had when you had your loss, and what what you did appreciate, so people can know what is socially acceptable. And I know everyone reacts a different way, but hearing from you what you appreciated.
that's a very, very good question. And basically, I think that the more you think about what people should say at a time like that, is the less said, the better off you are, because almost anything that you say, it could even be the tone of voice or one word that you use incorrectly, not incorrectly, but that doesn't like hit home, that can ruin your entire message. So people are very vulnerable at a time like that. And widows in general can be very sensitive and very vulnerable. Uh, Everybody has to make up or live their life the way that they see is the best way. And they have to heal their own way and be their own way. Everybody has to realize that everybody has inner strength, which you might not even realize that you have. And you have to have them come to the foreground. I think it's extremely important for everybody at whatever stage you're at to have a feeling that you are a person and you can stand on your own 2 feet. And you don't have to be somebody, because you don't have to have somebody next to you make you feel like a human being. You have to be a human being. You have to be a mensch by yourself. You have to have enough strength in you to be a mensch, and you have to take responsibilities and things like that. If you become a needy person, nobody wants to be near you. I tell people, nobody likes a crabby person, a cranky person, or a person who's a complainer. So no matter what stage you're at, if you're going to greet people with a sad face, or they'll ask you, how are you doing? And I tried this once. They say, no, you go on the street and somebody says to you, how are you? And you say, oh, I'm really having a miserable day. They'll say, well, that's good, and walk on, because they don't really care what you say. Nobody is really interested. But if you walk around and you're always complaining about life, how you don't have enough friends, and how you have too much free time and you don't know what to do, or how lonely you are, or how sad life is, and so on, people move away from you, because nobody likes to be with people that make you feel like downers. They pull you down. Nobody likes that. And then you wonder why people don't want to be with you. So you have to be positive within yourself. Now, I'm saying Viktor Frankl, that was somebody who fascinated me, and I'll tell you why. Uh,
Can you
I
just
was
tell us,
writing.
for the viewers, if that's okay, before you speak about Viktor Frankl, how the Rebbe was involved in Viktor Frankl?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to tell you. That's what I'm going to tell you. Okay. So I had no idea who Viktor Frankl was. And I wrote a book that's called It Was Evening, It Was Morning, Scandinavia in the Aftermath of World War II. And I interviewed a lot of people that rebuilt their lives after the Holocaust. I met them on my travels, and they were inspiring people who came to Sweden, and they were down and out, and they had faced a lot of difficulties, and they rebuilt their lives, and they became successful in many different ways. And it could even be successful to just be a mother and raise a healthy family. So as I was looking for material on these things, I came across a book about humor in the concentration camp that was written by a man in Sweden. And that was an oxymoron, if you could ever think of anything. How could there be humor in a concentration camp? It sounds totally insane. But it turned out that this idea of telling jokes in a concentration camp was a lifesaver, because if people didn't have an opportunity to smile or laugh every day, they became like robots. They lost their life. They lost their incentive to live. They became very depressed, very down and out. And they became what is referred to as a muscle man. You know, a muscle which is closed up. It's an empty shell. That's what they became. And one of the people who talked about this a great deal was Viktor Frankl. And that's how I learned about Viktor Frankl. And I thought it was just fascinating that he came out with an idea like that. And then I started to read about him. And then I found this unbelievably incredible situation that he had been in like 4 concentration camps, and he had lost his wife, and she had been pregnant. He had lost his parents. He had lost his family. He had suffered tremendously, but through it all, he was very occupied in his mind, and he wrote on scraps of paper thoughts and ideas for a book that he was going to write after the war. And he lived with this hope that the war was going to end, that this was not the end of the world. Things were going to change. Something else was going to happen. And he had a big coat that had big, deep pockets, and he put the notes in the pockets so that he would have these little notes. They had little notes of paper. They found little scribbled pieces of paper and little broken pieces of pencils and things. And one day he put his coat down, and somebody took the coat, and the coat was gone. And you would think that that's the end of the world. I mean, in a way it was, because it has all the writings in it. And then he thought to himself, no, it's all in my head. I wrote it so I can write it again. And he didn't give up. And then at the end of the war, when the war was finished and everybody was like busy just trying to recuperate and things, he sat down for like 2, 3 weeks, and he wrote that whole book, Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote it like feverishly. He just wrote and wrote and wrote, because he had all the things in his head that he wanted to write. And he published a book, I think it was in 1947, in German. And he wrote, what was the name of the book? Trotzdem Ja zum Leben sagen. That was the title of the book. Despite everything else, say yes to life. And he tried to get it published, and nobody was interested. Nobody wanted to publish it. Everybody was excited about Freud with the desire for pleasure. Everybody was excited about Adler and his philosophy about power. And nobody was interested in this book that he had written, which said that you have to look for a higher power. You have to believe that there's something beyond you, and you have to live with hope. You have to live with constant hope and positivity, and you have to find meaning and purpose in life. And so this went on for several years, and nothing happened. And then I think it was like 8 years later, something like that, or 13 years, 47, in the 50s, there was a woman who had been part of a Hasidic family in Hungary. She had been a singer. Her name was Margarita Hayes, and she'd been a very famous singer. And she sang in, I think it was 1933, 1934. She sang at a Salzburg festival, a Mozart festival in Germany, and Hitler was in the audience. And she was Jewish, and she came from a Hasidic family, but of course she wasn't quite with that family anymore. But she realized, she was smart enough to realize that this was not good, that things were going to a bad end. And she convinced her husband that they should leave, and they left. And she tried to get her family to leave, and they didn't, and everybody died, but she survived, and she had a daughter. Her daughter went to Detroit and married a doctor, and they became people that were honored at a Chabad house dinner in Detroit. And since the mother, they loved their mother, they told the mother to come to the dinner. She came to the dinner, and somebody at the dinner there convinced her she has to go see the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He would be interested in seeing her. And she wasn't really excited about seeing him because she had left that world. But they convinced her, so she went. And she thought she would just see him for a few minutes and then having a very long Yechidus with him, which I think was way over an hour. And she said she opened up and cried, which she hadn't done for years. And she cried, and she told him her whole life story, and she told her everything she had gone through. And at the end, the Rebbe said to her, when you go to Vienna next time, she said, I'm not thinking of going to Vienna. He said, when you think to go to Vienna, I want you to look up two people. I want you to look up the rabbi and give him a message from him. And I want you to look up this man, Viktor Frankl, and give him a message from me and say, don't give up. Keep on doing what you're doing. And so she ended up going to Vienna, and she came to look for him in the Institute of Neurology where he worked, and he wasn't there anymore. He had resigned because he felt that his life wasn't going anywhere. He had a brother in Australia. He was going to Australia. And there were no cell phones in those days. So uninvited, which you don't do in Europe, and certainly not in Vienna, he went to the house and knocked on the door, and he asked to see him. And then when he came to the door, he said, I have a message from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And Dr. Frankel looked at him and said, I don't know any Lubavitcher Rebbe. And he said, well, the message is, don't stop what you're doing. Don't give up, and you'll be successful. And he just looked at him in total shock. And he said to him, repeat it again and again. And he started working on it again. And the end of the story was he got the book published, and he sold 10 million copies or 30 million copies. And it's been translated to 19 languages or something like that. And it's one of the most read books about the Holocaust. So Viktor Frankl was somebody that the Rebbe really, I can't believe that the Rebbe found this book in German and read the German book that said, despite everything else, say yes to life, because he felt that Viktor Frankl's message was extremely important and meaningful for everybody. And I like to listen to his lectures on YouTube. I still follow him and everything. And his whole thrust is what I'm talking about now, that life has to have meaning and purpose. If your life doesn't have meaning and purpose, your life really doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't matter what age you are or who you are, but you have to have a meaning in life. And how do you get that meaning in life? Is get yourself a purpose. Find out what you are good at. Work on what you're good at. Find things, appreciate things that you see around you. Learn to be appreciative of life. Learn to trust. Learn to interact with people, and learn that there's a higher power above you that watches you and takes care of you, and that you're not yourself responsible for everything that goes on, but that there is a higher power than you, and that you have to keep that in mind. And it's like really betochen and emuna, and I feel that that's why the Rebbe appreciated his dealings with the mind, because nobody else spoke the way he did. And his was like, don't live in the past. That was another thing. Don't live in the past. The past is gone. It's like it happened already. So don't talk about your should have or could have, because you didn't do those things. Learn from the past. Learn from the past, but live in the present, and live fully in the present. And that way you'll have a better future. And I really believe that that's the way to live. I can't hear you again.
My apologies. That's such words of wisdom from you, and I hope we'll see the purpose that you're going to Israel, and you'll inspire us and come back on to share with us that purpose. Can't wait for it.
Well, I tell you what I'm hoping to do, seriously. I did a lot of speeches when I was traveling around, and I had a whole bunch of them like in a big folder. I'm sending them with me to Israel. I'm hoping to have classes at the place where I am, like simple classes, not I'm not into doing complicated things, but simple classes like talking about Viktor Frankl, or just really learning about the brachas that we say every morning, to like really appreciate them and think about them, not to rattle them off, or maybe some people aren't even saying them, but it doesn't matter, but learn what they stand for and develop this feeling of appreciation and thankfulness to Hashem for everything.
Wow, that's beautiful. Without gratitude, we have nothing. So,
Right,
great.
exactly. So if we have appreciation and gratitude, then we're able to think straight, and then we can think of that life has a purpose and meaning. And no matter how young we are or how old we are, we need to have that purpose in our lives. We have to feel that life is worthwhile. And, it's sad because there's so many disillusioned young people today. And he actually brought up this whole theory because when he was young, in pre-war Hitler times, there was a large suicide rate of young people in Vienna. And that was understandable because Hitler was coming in and times were bad. But today, we're living an affluent life, and we still hear about very depressed young people. And we hear a problem of suicide too. And all of that is when you don't feel that you have a purpose. When you don't feel that you're worthwhile, that you're important. Hashem created you for a purpose. If you don't know the purpose yet, just think of what you're good at and pay attention to that and work on that and become better at that. But find something meaningful to do with your life.
I love that. And when you give, that's also purpose to others.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's part of it. It's being with people, it's sharing with people, it's interacting, it's having positive experiences. He said that's also important, just to go outside and see nature and see what's around you and appreciate it. Just any simple things, experiences. Just keep your eyes open and be aware of what's happening. Yeah, all of these things are good for all stages in life and for all people. So I heartily recommend that people get interested in it. But I thought it was so interesting that the Lubavitcher Rebbe understood his writings, and that really made me so much ever more excited about what he had written.
Wow. Thanks for sharing tonight. I hope you'll come back again in the future.
Absolutely.
We spoke about it. And I'm so glad that I made a new friend.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
This
We'll
class brings
definitely
me
keep
opportunities to make wonderful and special friends. So we spoke about it earlier. We're going to keep in touch. And
Okay.
I'm looking forward to hearing about your new chapter.
Thank you, thank you. And I just want to say it's also nice that we met at a simcha, because simchas are always good. And people should attend simchas, even if they don't get a personal invitation, if it's put out there on COL and you have some kind of interest in the people, maybe you should just go and give a mazel tov and just, appreciate that people are having simchas and let yourself be seen. And then don't sit back and feel lonely and say that, you never have a place to go. But a simcha is always a good place to go to.
That is such
That's
good
how
word
we
of
met.
advice. And we never feel bad going to simcha, ever.
Right. Exactly.
Only feel good
Exactly.
about it. So, and you make the other
Exactly.
person feel good too. So it's a double winner.
Absolutely. And I have to say something. I should have said it before, and I'll feel bad if I don't say it. It's not really connected to this, but I'll say it anyway. And I'll say it to you because I appreciate that about you. That the Rebbe, the most important thing that I remember about the Rebbe, the one thing that stands out in my mind, and I don't know, what everybody has their own thoughts and things, but mine is that the Rebbe was an incredible listener. He would sit or stand. He would sit when you went for Yechidus. He would stand when he was giving out dollars, and he would listen, but he would not listen just with a little bit. He would listen completely. You could see him being absorbed in whatever you were saying, and that he was listening to it with every part of his body. And how did you know that he listened? Because you'd come to him on Yechidus one time and discuss something, and then you come back 6 months later, and he would be ask about the things that you had discussed 6 months earlier when you had forgotten what you had talked about. You had forgotten your answers. He knew your answers and the topics and everything. So you knew instinctively that he knew everything that you said. And I think the art of listening is so precious, and it's being lost today. It's being lost because people are so busy using their little cute fingers, clicking away on machines all the time. So people don't have time to listen. They're always busy producing little messages and sending more messages and getting more thoughts across, but they're not listening. And you learn so much by listening. So I just want to bring that up, that I think it would be a blessing if people would learn to listen. And I appreciate you because you're a good listener. And I think we learn so much in life by just listening.
Wow, that was so profound. We're going to conclude now with a beautiful video of the Rebbe. So give me a moment while I pull it up.
Okay.
Ich will gerade so beten, vergessen von meiner Freundin. Ja, ich soll nicht sagen, wenn die gesund haben, gesunde Kinder und haben gesunde Psyche, so haben wir auch schon viel besser. Ja, aber gestern in die Zeit, mir war es auch.
Since what we do to now, you can be active now also. The retirement is only good for old people, or young young person. But 220, how much money you need? 220, you have 45 years. It doesn't matter. It can be good to the best thing for you and Geschäften, that you can certainly continue it, not have to thinking about retiring, you must gain much more money to give much more tzedakah, and to do so in good mood and good health together with your family.
And things are moving along well, and I'm not going to retire.
Yeah, thank you. Forget about it.
So we all heard what the Rebbe told people not to retire, and everyone should live until you're 120. You're not old, so stay young, everyone. And today, like 90 is a new 70, 60 is a new 40, 50 today is not old. I know that Mrs. Sharfstein said that in those days, 50 was like the elderly of the community.
Right.
It's not old anymore. So it's definitely, we're getting closer to Mashiach, and we all have to finish our missions so Mashiach can come. So we should all tap into our purpose, and we should tap into our missions and tap into our gifts that Hashem gave us, because we all are unique. Have a blessed night, everyone. And thank you so much, Mrs. Sharfstein, for sharing your beautiful words of wisdom with us.
Good evening. Thank you. All the best to you.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.